Quick disclaimer. This is all conjecture based on rumors combined with speculative imagination. There are very few real facts here, as most of what we know is speculative, but figure I'd get it out of the way. Amd Bristol Ridge. One last hurrah for Bulldozer, or an exercise in futility. Specifically, Amd Bristol Ridge is a standard refresh of the Carrizo and Godvari APU product lines on both mobile and desktop respectively. To put it all bluntly, Bristol Ridge is a direct development of Carrizo. Once again, we will have 4 excavator cores and up to 8 graphics compute units of the 3rd generation graphics core Next type, also known as GCN 1.2. In total, that means 512 total stream processors for top-end products. There will still be only 2 MB of L2 cache, true audio support, and the APU will still be built on a way too old 28nm process. Architecturally, Bristol Ridge is hardly any different from Carrizo. There is one huge change, however, one that I fear may never be used to its full potential. That is DDR4 support. Honestly, AMD should have had DDR4 support a year ago with the release of Kaveri. It is very well known by both AMD and consumers how bandwidth-dependent APUs are for extracting their full graphics performance, especially the top-end desktop Kaveri and Carrizo models that are quite memory bandwidth starved, being stuck on DDR3 2133. Yes, on a desktop Kaveri, you can potentially overclock the memory or go with a speed that is unofficially supported by the APU in the chipset. Bristol Ridge from the get-go will officially support DDR4 2400. However, that is as high as the official support goes. So once again, it becomes about overclocking potential for higher DDR4 rates. Optimistically, any increase in memory bandwidth is welcome for extracting the full potential of an APU. It's just that AMD was a year late to the DDR4 party, and memory overclocking will ultimately be limited to desktop platforms. My biggest fear is that OEMs, on laptops especially, and I'm looking at you HP and Toshiba, will once again not take full advantage of the Bristol Ridge feature set, like they did with Carrizo. Sort of damning to the Bristol Ridge product is that it does support DDR3 and is droppable right into AMD FP4 mobile platform that Carrizo currently uses. Meaning that Bristol Ridge will likely be hampered by OEMs much like Carrizo has, albeit in a differing manner. Carrizo with its configurable thermal design power has mostly been limited to 15-watt operation in the laptops that use them. Keeping the TDP so low makes the chip viable for thinner and smaller notebook products, but for larger products means that manufacturers don't have to employ as substantial thermal management hardware. This is incredibly damning for the top-end Carrizo products like the FX8800, which is the best in the Carrizo family, but unable to sustain high CPU or graphics clock speeds because manufacturers simply don't let it. I completely expect the same problem to happen with Bristol Ridge, even if AMD uses tighter restrictions on the configurability of the chip TDP. Furthermore, I'm expecting few, if any, laptop manufacturers to use DDR4. They are likely to recycle the Carrizo mobile platform because it's cheap and readily available. I just hope that AMD is able to convince manufacturers that a few more dollars in cooling hardware is worth the better experience customers will get when a Bristol Ridge APU is allowed to meet its TDP capabilities. These kind of practices, much like installing RAM on just one channel instead of both, are part of the reason why some PC laptop manufacturers have created a bad name for themselves and the PC industry. More optimistically, Bristol Ridge will be available on desktop, where its use of DDR4 can be better employed. Expect motherboard manufacturers to support rates above DDR4 2400 and probably up to DDR4 3400, but perhaps beyond. Just don't expect pre-made desktops to use anything special, since DDR4 is the only memory type desktop Bristol Ridge will support, and DDR4 certainly does come in flavors below 2400 data rate. Now, I must note that there is a practical price ceiling to be considered when making an APU-based system. Spending high amounts of time, money, and patience configuring a Bristol Ridge desktop just to support more expensive and faster DDR4 memory is not always the best course of action. There will be instances where spending this kind of money makes sense, like small home theater PCs where there is no room for a graphics card. Moreover, overclocking and increased memory speed support can be seen as a way of upgrading an APU system as it gets older. It really depends on what you're trying to achieve with your APU system, so one must keep track of their expenses. A little more money and better direction will often yield much better results. Bristol Ridge should be available in Athlon form without on-die graphics. The advantage here is we won't be paying for the graphics array we normally would with a full APU die. Those savings can be put towards an actual graphics card that is leaps better than the best APU graphics out there. One caveat is that with Excavator, don't expect the CPU cores on Bristol Ridge to offer very competitive performance to the latest i3 6000 series dual cores from Intel. Kaveri and Carrizo really couldn't even compete with Haswell i3s beyond graphics and value, so I would not set my expectations with Bristol Ridge that high. It's because of that issue entirely that AMD needs Zen out as soon as possible. AMD's excavator cores are derived from 4-year-old bulldozer architecture that was hardly competitive with Intel from the start on a module versus core basis. Even when we had cases of parity, Intel chips tend to have significant power savings and efficiency advantages thanks to Intel's lead in manufacturing process technologies. Bristol Ridge should be AMD's last product in the bulldozer family, or at least I hope so. We should see AMD products with the Zen x86 microarchitecture later this year, hopefully before fall. So that's it for this episode of Tech Blitz. Leave a comment down below on how you think Bristol Ridge will turn out. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any more news from the PC tech world, and hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching everybody. I hope to see you next time on Tech Blitz.